Welcome to the lighter side of the spectrum, the podcast that celebrates the multiple hats we wear and the juggling acts we perform in life. Whether you're parenting kids and teens on the autism spectrum, navigating the ever-evolving healthcare industry, or building a more inclusive and impactful world, this is your space to find connection, inspiration, and growth. Together, we'll share stories, tackle challenges, and explore how innovation and inclusion create better outcomes for everyone. Because no matter the spectrum, there's always a lighter side. Now here's your host, David Kaufer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, friends, to the lighter side of the spectrum. This is the podcast where we celebrate the many hats we wear in life. Whether you're a parent navigating the world of autism, a healthcare professional trying to build a more inclusive practice, or someone just trying to create positive change, this is your space to connect, grow, and learn. And today, I'm really excited to welcome Kristina and Herb, the founders of Vibrant Family Education and hosts of Bringing Education Home podcast, which I had the pleasure of appearing on a couple months ago. They have been together for an incredible 33 years and have blended their passions for education, business, and entrepreneurship to empower families to take control of their children's learning. They're also parents of an adult son who's on the autism spectrum, and so they understand firsthand the unique challenges that many families face in education and in life in general. But their mission is to provide tools that help parents create happy, healthy, and successful children, paving the way for stronger communities and a better world. And so with that, welcome Kristina and Herb. And Herb, I understand birthday wishes are in order today too. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Actually, it was yesterday, but I still very much appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, you know, sometimes those Facebook posts don't quite make it in time, but I hope you had a great birthday.
I did. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thanks you guys for joining. This is a topic I think is both interesting and important. Homeschooling has, really grown over the last few years for a lot of different reasons. I think there are a lot of people who are more aware of different options that they have when it comes to their education. But before we kind of dive into some of the hows and whys, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Because I think it's really interesting and unique how you've gotten to this place.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah. So my journey actually is an education career of almost 30 years. I was a classroom teacher for 27 of those years. And I have stepped out of the classroom and into this space of homeschooling because I've seen that there's something that needed to be different, that needed to be changed. I went through all the times, the ups and downs, the changing of curriculum policies, all those kinds of things. And I went from a space where I was enjoying my kids so much in the classroom that I cried at the end of the year whenever they moved on to the next teacher because I loved them, right? But then unfortunately, as my career changed and as the policies changed and a whole bunch of different things changed, I started crying in the middle of the year because I felt like I couldn't reach the children or I wasn't connecting with parents enough, or there were things that just weren't quite right. And when those things started happening, I started looking at, oh my gosh, what can I do a little bit different, right? How can I really reach those families? But then when the pandemic came, I was actually moved to an online school. It wasn't the pandemic classrooms. It was the actual online school for the school district. And I got to be that coach as well as that teacher to help parents really make education work for their child while they were at home. And that sparked in me part of this dream and part of this passion to really bring education home and reach those parents in a different way.
And I was in corporate America. I worked for a really small electronics firm named Intel. Might have heard of it.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. And I left that company to start a business. And that business didn't quite work out for me. I left it successfully, but I didn't like it. And then I found one that worked and I was really starting to take off. And it was a win-win-win kind of a business where everybody who worked with me ended up benefiting and really enjoyed that, was really starting to take off. And then I had an accident when I was snowboarding and I suffered a traumatic brain injury and pretty much everything in my life fell apart. I ended up losing my business. I was unemployed for a lot of years because I lost my emotional stability. I kind of really lost it. And then I was able to finally get the help that I needed. And surprisingly, right as this started happening, I ended up at a business event in Montana. And really, I helped somebody move. And the lady that I helped move was like, oh yeah, well, my girlfriend's boyfriend is doing this thing. And because you helped me move, I'm going to take it. So it was totally not intentional. And in that meeting, it was about speaking and how to speak and bring your business about. And during that 3-day event, towards the end of it, I received a message that I needed to tell this group of people about the school idea that we had. And it was just towards the end of the pandemic. And I told them about the school, and their jaws dropped, their eyes opened. It's like, wow, do you really have that? It's like, well, I don't, but my wife does. And together,
I know someone who does, right?
And together we can really make this happen, because I'm kind of like the visionary and she's really the nuts and bolts. And so I called her on the phone from Montana and was like, you're not going to believe this. But she trusted me still. And we took this leap, and we started Vibrant Family Education from that process, because this was also right after the 2 years where she did that coaching. And this was a remote coaching opportunity where we got to start bringing our school ideas to the parents. And in that moment, it's like, because we've been talking about the school for a long time. And part of the reason I was building my business was so that I could put that school together. But then when I was told to tell them about your school. It's like, you took that away from me. And, I'm talking to a higher power here. It's like, you took that away from me. And it's like, it's still not yours. We're giving it to the parents. And so the parents are going to be in charge of their own schools. And so that's kind of the inspirational view of how we got here.
Wow. What a journey. It's very serendipitous, and a lot of different things along the way. Why don't you talk again at this point, talk about kind of what is it? How do you help parents? How do you work with parents and families? And then, like I said, then we'll kind of dive into I'd love to hear your thoughts about trends and again, how parents and families should think about homeschooling and some of these other topics.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. So what we do is we help parents who are looking and exploring into homeschool and want to know how they can do it. They're scared. They're not confident. They're like, oh, I really am considering this, but it's a big step. That's, having my child's education solely on me, that's huge. And so they aren't quite ready. And so what we do as a Vibrant Family company is help them make the plans, look at family values, make sure they're set up and feeling confident about it. And then after we get them set up and get them going, then we continue to support. So I bring my 27 years of education experience, as well as all the research I've done, all the parents I've talked to, all the different things that we have done to be ready for this, and help them move forward in a confident manner. So we do schedules, routines, curriculum, all those things that are the big questions about how do I get started and will this really work for me and my family?
Yeah. So from the businessy kind of a guy, what that sounds like is, instead of learning how to do it all yourself, instead of having to research it all, it's like you're hiring a coach that's going to take all of these steps, and it's going to help streamline it to your personality, to your family, to what your needs are, and help you get the process under control right from the start, to take out a lot of the uncertainty, to take out a lot of the mistakes, and to help you feel more confident in moving forward. So we offer coaching services a lot around that, to just make the journey into the decision to take your children out of school a lot easier for the parents.
Oh, I can see where that would be tremendously valuable. It's something, as is the case with many guests that I've had here, is like, man, I wish I knew you a few years ago. Like, this is something that would have been helpful in our journey when, turning back the clock now a couple of years. It's actually, we're coming up on about the 2-year anniversary where, we butted heads with our school district because we discovered Stone's amazing talents when he was able to communicate their unwillingness, to work with us. And that was exactly one of the questions that we had was, okay, if not school, as we've just been a traditional family. Stone has a twin brother who was going to public school. That's all we knew. Of course, we knew that homeschooling could be an option, but you're right. It's very intimidating. It seems like a lot of work. And I know it is a lot of work. It's a big commitment. And just something as you mentioned, that it's hard, I think, to, unless you have that kind of a background, to feel confident and like, I'm just going to do this in a way that's best for my child. So I think that's wonderful.
And that actually answers one of the things that we talk about a lot. We have 3 myths that we talk about homeschooling. And one of those is I can't be my child's teacher because I wasn't educated as a teacher, or I don't have the education degree. I don't have the this. And that's one thing we talk about is that, you're your child's teacher from the moment you bring them home.
Right. That's
You
true.
truly are their teacher, right? And you can be their best teacher in life, in learning, because you know them best, right? You know about their sleep schedules. You know about their eating schedules. You know about their energy schedules, when they're awake and ready to go and when they're not. And then when we start talking about special needs children on top of that, right? Then you really have a better leg up than the people in the classroom because they don't get to spend as much time with the child. Now, does that mean that you're the only person that's going to educate your child? No, most people, especially who are looking into homeschooling, know that where their weaknesses are or where they need support. And yeah, are you going to get help? Yeah, just like any family. But you don't have to rely on the school district, especially if you're butting heads, especially if you really have a different idea of how education should be. So getting the support and making it happen, you are your child's first best teacher.
And a lot of people think that they can't be a good teacher because they didn't do good in school. And you're right. And so if you didn't do good in school, then you know that the school system failed you. So why do you think that the school system is going to be better for your children than it was for you? And again, if you take that into special needs, and especially with people on the spectrum, it's like they didn't do well with you when you weren't on the spectrum. How much do you think they're going to be able to help your child who is? So with that kind of in mind, it's like, you know that you can teach your children, and it's actually kind of weird because as you start working with us, there's a lot of times there's just a few core concepts that you missed in school. And as you hear your children learn that, then there's times where our adults pick that up as well. And suddenly they start becoming better at reading. They start becoming better at math because some of these little fundamentals that they missed got picked up in the teaching. So it's like, not only are you more qualified to teach your children, especially on the autism spectrum, but it's like, it also helps you become stronger yourself as well.
I think it's one of those situations where you don't know what you don't know. And again, so many of us kind of come, our general age bracket, generation, kind of from these traditional educational environments, right? Where it was just classroom in a box and we just kind of marched through, and it's what you know, right? And what you're kind of told about these are experts in certain subjects. Although, again, we all know we all had teachers who certainly weren't experts and varying degrees of skill level. But like I said, when it comes to you saying, I'm going to educate my child, all of a sudden you think about it a little bit differently. And it makes sense what you said as far as you do know your child best. But I think it's the curriculum piece probably that you could tell me if that's something that intimidates people more, the curriculum side.
Well, the second biggest thing or second biggest myth that we break is that you don't have the time to do it. And people think that their kids need to be sitting in a classroom for 6 to 7 hours or 8 hours. And that's not really the case. Actually, when you get down to it, there's only 2 or 3 instruction kind of hours a day. And they drag that out for 7 hours throughout the school system. But that 2 or 3 hours can be when your children need it the most, can be when you need it the most. So it can be in the afternoons, it can be in the morning. And it's not always 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes you go through days where you don't necessarily need to be that active. And so the time is your kids are going to be there, but it's not all learning time. And so in those learning times,
academic time.
Academic time. Right.
If they really like art, then they can be spending hours doing their artwork. If they like math, then hours playing with numbers. It's like, and that's not necessarily time that you are sitting there directing them. So that the time that the parents or the teaching person is going to be directing them is not extensive.
I think that's a great point. And we do have a special visitor here. Stone is in the studio here in Edmonds. He's joined us. He's watching the snow. So you might see or hear him in the back. Are you going to come around and say hi?
Yeah.
No?
Baby.
Okay, yeah, go for it. All right, yeah. Let me know where he was missed on. He said hi. So yeah, he loves this. He loves doing the podcast recordings and listening and providing his feedback afterwards, which is a lot of fun.
And that was actually really, really amazing because when you were on our podcast, you said that he had listened to quite a bit of it and he was giving you feedback after you talked on our podcast. And I just love that. Yeah.
It's incredible. Honestly, I don't understand how he can do it, like I said, but he does it. He listens. He's able to tune in. He's got one of his superpowers that he has. But to your point, Herb, as far as like academic time and like that's something that we've learned again with Stone, even though we're doing the private school route. But it's amazing when you really just focus on the academic time. And so he's taking, a number of different subjects, it's 50-minute class, one-on-one. I get through a lot. And, he's plowing through the studies at a great, and we're able to supplement it in other ways. But you're right. I think a lot of the school is tying them up for X number of hours because that's the expectation that this is school time. But it's not, we know it's not academic time.
And the other thing about that is that you have to remember that instead of being focused with one student, you have classrooms of 20, 30 people.
Or more, right.
Kids. And you have to move them back and forth between PE, music, library, all those kinds of things. So that again expands the length of time, why they're there so long. And you don't need that at home because you get to make those transitions more naturally. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious because you mentioned earlier the different career paths that you had. How has that combination shaped the way you approach homeschooling and family education?
Well, for me, it was definitely, still on the education vein and everything like that. And like I said, that silver lining was whenever I went to that online school. And even though I was teaching those kids constantly, I was also very much interacting, coaching with the parents, right? So it just shone a light on things. And the other part of that really changed in my career path and why this is working so well is because parents and families and everyone in the society is actually more aware now of how students learn differently. There's so many online curriculums that are available. There are so many more book curriculums that are available. It's instead of, the homeschool kids being the weird kids, right? It's more natural because everybody had to do it for a while, right? So all of those changes really moved to help me move to where I am and what I see and what I can see as potential for our families. And looking back at raising our own kids, it's one of those things that, it went through my mind. I was the teacher. I was like, you know what? I really wish I could homeschool my kids. But at that point, I was dedicated to the school and dedicated to those other kids. Even though I love my kids dearly, I'm like, I can't take them out because I'm not going to have time kind of thing. All those things that we're telling parents, let's shift that perspective. Let's shift that mind view. It's the things that I went through. And so just knowing now that maybe I could have made a difference for our autistic son if I would have taken him out or done something a little bit different, right?
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Shift for me.
Yeah. And from my point of view, coming at it as an entrepreneur, it's like entrepreneurs are constantly learning. We have the business development, we have the personal development, and the classes are for like a couple of weeks or a couple of months at a time. And it's really intense and you get it. And then you move on to the next course. And so not only do we bring that kind of an attitude into our learning, it's like, because that's how people learn really well. So instead of like spending a whole long year on a subject and going through a little bit at a time, you intensely focus on it, you get it right, and then you move on to the next interesting thing. And, and one of the things that we say is like entrepreneurs are always doing the business development and they're always doing the personal development. And why this system really works really well for the entrepreneur as well is because we put that third leg under the stool. So many entrepreneurs go into business so that they can build a better life for their family. But then in that, they spend so much time working on their business and doing all of this development that they lose their family along the way. So if you put in the family development at the same time, you bring your kids home, you start with what you want at the end. You start with it at first because you're doing this for your family. Bring your family home. You're doing your personal development, you're doing your business development, do your family development and your educational development with your children. Teach them to learn like you are as an entrepreneur. And then your whole family grows up. And what you wanted at the end, you get at the beginning.
What are some of the other support systems in place for families who want to go that route? Um, I know that school districts to different levels of degree have to provide some level of support for those who opt in. Can you talk about that? Because I don't know if everyone's really aware of that. They may feel like that they're on their own, essentially, if they decide to take that path.
Yeah, so if they decide to homeschool, yes, you are in charge, right? And it also depends on the state, right? So Oregon is one of those kind of medium level legal states where you have to register as a homeschool family. You have to do testing at grades 3, 5, 8, right? Some of those. And then other states are very much basically hands off. You want to homeschool? Awesome. Here you go. See you later. And then there's a high level states, right? That not only say you have to be tested so often, you have to actually like turn in lesson plans, or you have to record so many hours per year that you're working with your students on the academics, those kinds of things. So you really have to look at your state laws on education, right? For homeschool. So that's one thing. There's a ton of what's called co-ops. And those co-ops are groups of homeschool families that get together and support each other. So like when I said, maybe you don't feel confident teaching a certain level of math, you search out your co-op or, their coach, right? Or a tutor or somebody, and they help you with that portion of the math that you're not comfortable with. So that's another support for families. There's tons of Facebook groups on anymore now. I have my own Facebook group that helps support families who really want to find out more, connect with other families. And then besides that, the school district itself doesn't have to provide the full level of services that they used to if you were in the public school, but there are certain things that you can still access. So for example, most schools, that after school activities, the drama, some of the band, sports, those kinds of things, your students can still participate in the school at those activities, right? And if you have a special needs child, you can work with the school, and sometimes they will still provide some of those services, those IEP services, like the speech and things like that, if you work with them. Of course, you need to check with your school district. In Oregon, we have what's called regional educational service districts, and they also help provide some of those kinds of things. So you do have support. You're not totally on your own, but you do have to be proactive. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to kind of take the initiative and drive it. I'm sure it's not one of those things that they come out and say, "Hey, here you go."
Yep. And that's another thing that, again, having a coach can really help you with. Is like, hey, have you looked into this? Have you looked into this? So instead of it's like, well, what can I do? And trying to just random Google search, it's like having somebody's like, well, have you checked into this aspect? Have you looked for this kind of a pod? Have you checked to see if your school will let your son play basketball or football or baseball, whatever he's into? Or is the drama team available for after school for homeschool kids? So there's all of these things that having somebody to know that you can ask that question to is like so very helpful.
Yeah, I'll bet. No, that's great stuff. I think what we're going to do, we're going to take a little break here. And when we come back, I know that you have a tip of the week that we're going to share, as well as fact or fiction. And one or two other topics I want to kind of dive into. So we're just going to sit tight for a minute here. I hope you're enjoying the lighter side of the spectrum. So far, we're commercial free, but if you're finding value here, one way to support the show is by considering me for a speaking engagement. I speak on unlocking potential, whether it's for individuals like my son or for entire organizations. I also offer fractional CMO services for businesses needing strategic marketing support without the full-time commitment, drawing on over 35 years of experience in marketing. My agency has helped companies and healthcare practices increase their value, grow, and even prepare for acquisition. To learn more about my speaking topics, visit davidkaufer.com. Or if you're interested in our marketing or fractional CMO services, check out kaufermarketing.com. If you're enjoying this episode, please leave a review. Your feedback means a lot, and it helps me make this podcast even more useful. Lastly, don't forget to share it with anyone who would appreciate the insights and stories we're sharing here. Thanks again for listening. Okay, and we're back, and it's time for one of our weekly segments. This is going to be the tip of the week, and so we're going to ask producer Dave to hit the jingle.
Hey parents, gather around, it's time to speak. We're here with your tip of the week. Strategies and wisdom just for you. Autism parents, we know what you go through.
Okay, it's time for the tip of the week, and I know, Kristina, you've got a great tip of the week for us about making homework more manageable. I'll hand it off to you. What do you got for us?
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. As I've been working with families, I really had that question a lot. It's like, what do we do about homework? It's driving us nuts. The dad wants to do the homework right after they get home from school, no breaks, just get in there and get it done. The mom says, oh no, wait a second. Let's wait till you come home from work and then all of us can do it together, or you can help with homework too. And as I was talking with that family, I said, well, wait a second. Have you guys thought about what the kids need in that scenario? And what the family was like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, you're both kind of right? We have to pick the right time to do homework. And I said, make sure that when your kids get home, that they actually get their break. They have been so good all day long. They have been so focused in the classroom all day long that their brain probably needs a break. So asking them to come home and sit down and immediately do their homework, probably not very child appropriate. Just like you like to take a little bit of a break. So have them do some quiet times. Go build with blocks, go read a book, go stretch, go run around outside. Give them a snack to stabilize their blood sugar, and then bring them in to do the homework a little bit later. And instead of doing it way late at night, what if you were doing it around dinner time? Whoever is in the kitchen, mom, dad, whoever is working on meal prep, they're at the table doing their homework. You're close by to be able to answer some questions. And then you're all kind of in the same room together, building that family connection. So homework time, try to make a time that's great for all of you and make sure your kids are ready, not too tired, not hungry, and not too late that it's time for bed.
That is an awesome tip. And it makes so much sense because you're right. Who wants to dive into work right after a long day, whether it's at the office or it's working or at school? Because there is a lot going on for our kids in school that they're managing. There's a lot of sensory information that they're dealing with, and they need downtime like almost everyone I know. When they get home from work or whatever, the first thing you do is, right, you just kick back and turn on the TV or whatever it may be before you dive into paying the bills and life types of things. So I like that. Talk to me a little bit about some of the changes that you've seen over the years, because again, you have an adult son. If I remember right,
Yes.
see, how old's your son?
He is 33.
33. Ironically, the same number of years you've been together.
Well, we've actually been together 35.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And we
Got
had a anniversary since the last time or since I we're at 34.
Oh.
And I know I forgot to change it for you.
oh, it's okay. Okay. All right. Well, it's a long time. It's a long time, but that's great. So he's 33. What are some of the changes that you've seen in education and in society from the time that you were raising him and what you're seeing today, and for better and for worse, if that's the case?
There's good and bad, right? There's definitely more awareness, which is really, really awesome because there's more people who are accepting of a kiddo who is either having a meltdown or having a rough time, because people are realizing now that we do have more of those children around and that we really need to really kind of pay attention to that a little bit more and maybe not be so quick to judge, right? Now, there still are, unfortunately, those parents who are a little bit lax in their parenting, and it could be changed with some behavior modifications. But we also know that there's some kiddos who just can't handle certain things. So that's a good thing that there's more awareness and there's actually more help. There's more groups, support groups, things like that for our kiddos. And, with our son, there's adult support groups out there now as well. And
Oh,
the
great.
beautiful thing is that, especially with everything that's been going on, online is more available. So there's even online support groups now that they can go and join in and have chats and things like that. where they're more comfortable, right? Because a lot of our autistic kiddos, they're not necessarily comfortable in big settings or out of their house too much. We always want to push them and try to encourage growth in that area. But if they can go to an online meeting and still connect with people that are kind of like them, that's really, really great. So I love those connections. So a couple of things that aren't so good is that some of our schools, especially here in our district, has adopted a mode of push everybody into the classroom, even if they're not really able to handle being in the classroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're saying they're pushing them into the classroom with support to give them life experiences, to expose them to the quote unquote average child, right? And unfortunately, it's causing the ripple effect of causing disruptive behavior in the classroom. So other kids aren't learning as well. So that's one thing that was really rough with me that I saw over time is like, we have to really have a balance. Yes, we need all of our kids exposed to other kids and things like that. But if they're in there disrupting the classroom for the other students, is that really helpful, right? Because they're embarrassed, maybe because they're making noise and can't pay attention like the other kids, right? Or the other kids start kind of picking on them because they're not fitting in. So we really have to look at that carefully. And I don't like that trend as much.
So interesting. I hadn't heard that before, but yeah, well, I want to touch on that. Go ahead, Herb. I know you want to jump in.
I know we kind of touched on this a little bit before, but one of the biggest trends is, when we were kids and even when she first started, the homeschool kids were the kind of the weird, strange kids. They didn't quite fit in. And now what we're finding is the homeschools are actually more sought out by colleges because they're more well-rounded. They're able to talk with people of all different age groups. Whereas if you're in school, it's like you play just with the same people in your same grade. You don't, and the cross grade playing with the children just doesn't happen. So the children only know how to talk to people of their own age. But once you get out of school, it's like that's just gone. Now you have to be able to talk to everybody. And
that's not reality, right?
Yeah. So the homeschool kids is like when they go to music, they're not going to music with just kids their own age because you have to find an out of school program. So they're going to a music with people of all ages who are all there working cooperatively towards a specific goal. And so they might need to talk with the adult. They might need to talk with the teen. They might need to talk with the younger and coordinate. So they have better verbal skills coming through homeschool. And so now the homeschool kids tend to be more well-rounded. And seriously, a lot of the kids coming out of public education are the weird ones now with a lot of the stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a tough age anyway. There's plenty of weirdness.
I'm going to say some schools are a lot weirder than others. And we've been finding a lot of schools lately that are actually doing a really good job as well. Yeah. So it really depends on your school district and where you're at.
And you hear us talk about the schools a lot. And, it's not the teachers usually. There are so many awesome teachers who really want their students, but they are surrounded by policies and things that sometimes interfere in the classroom. So, we're not totally bashing schools, but yes, there's different things that can be changed.
Right. I mean, it's complicated. Let's be honest here. It's complicated. Yeah. And to your point, Kristina, I was thinking about what you're saying, and I totally get that point. My brother just retired. He was a public school teacher for 30 years, high school, middle school. And we used to talk about that. And there's a balancing act between being inclusive and providing an education that every child has a right to have, right? And giving them access to real education. And this, as you guys know from our conversation earlier, was just a huge bone of contention in that, Stone got none of that, right? There's somewhere we need to find that happy medium of inclusion and a hybrid model where kids have access to education, but also have the opportunity to be in maybe a more secluded environment at times, not all the time, but times for them to dysregulate, be themselves, not have to worry about being disruptive. Like you said, they are very aware. They know that, but they also want to be around other kids. They want to be, they just want to be students too. And I'm sure it varies, school by school, district by district, in terms of how successful some of these strategies are in terms of how you integrate all these students. But overall, from what I'm hearing, it's still an area that we need a lot of improvement.
Yes.
Very much so.
So along those lines, what would you tell a family? What does success look like for a family who chooses to homeschool? I mean, how do you redefine success? Because it's a little different, right? You're not sitting there waiting for the report card to show up. You get that email with a report card from all the different teachers. How would you say it works for their situation?
I think you know that you've been successful when you have a child who has a love of learning and has strong confidence. And that's not usually what people think of. They're like, oh, well, what about the grades?
I like that.
Yeah. If they have a love of learning, if they're pulling knowledge to them, they're like, oh, I want to go find out about this now. I want to go find out about this now. And they're making those connections, right? Then they are being successful learners and will go far in life. If they have a confidence where they can walk up to an adult and say, oh, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? Or have a conversation with an adult. If they have the confidence in themselves, I'm a little bit quiet. I'm a little bit shy, but I'm going to be okay when I go out to my music group or my karate group or whatever, right? They have that confidence in knowing who they are and what they're doing. And that's being fostered and developed by having a holistic homeschool. And that's one thing that we haven't talked about yet is homeschool is not just about academics. It's the whole child and it's the whole learning, the whole lifelong learning. So yeah, it's a little bit of a different answer than you're probably expecting, but I would say if they have a love of learning and they have confidence, then you're being successful.
And, again, I'm going to bring it back to what I talked about is the third leg of that stool being the family development. So it's not just about the education and the educational goals of the children. Do your children enjoy spending time with you? Do they talk with you? Can they count on you? What is the communication that's happening with your family? And are you getting along as a family? And so it's not just, that's why we call it vibrant family education. And it's not just about the children. It's about bringing the whole family along on this journey. And, part of the reason we do that is because, our youngest son doesn't talk to us anymore. He hasn't talked to us in many, many years. And so the pain of losing that bond that we had there was drastic. And it was because we weren't necessarily passing on our family values. We thought we had a real strong relationship. But then when a challenge came up, it fell apart. So to be able to go through a challenge as a family together and to maintain strong, that is the success. To be able to grow old and have your children want to still come with you and bring their grandchildren and maybe their great grandchildren. That is what success is in this. And we use education as a way to put that together. So it's not just about the children, it's about the whole family, making sure that we start building these family bonds and the family structure back, because, that's really what's going to keep our nation together.
I think that's a really good point in terms of we have a tendency to bucket some of these areas like education or physical activity, whatever it may be. But what we're talking about is we want our children to grow up to be successful in life, whatever that looks like. And some of these areas, like you said, Kristina, I love that, have a love for learning, being confident in themselves, not feeling like they're stupid or dumb because maybe they have challenges in certain areas. And instead of, fostering strengths, a lot of times I think our society and schools hammer on the weaknesses, or parents too, right? We've all been there. We've all, sometimes focused too much on the weaknesses, thinking that we could try to fix them or improve them or something like that. But it really is about life and trying to help them feel like it's a complicated, difficult world out there. We want them to succeed. I think this would be a good time to do our second segment of the week, which is fact or fiction. And so, of course, we do have a jingle for that.
Get QuickTime ready, and here we go. This is Autism Fact or Fiction. We're breaking down what's real, what's rumor, and what might surprise you. Let's go.
All right, now it's time for fact or fiction. Today's topic: do IEPs really work? Right? Is that Kristina? Yeah. Why don't you take it from there?
That is me. Yeah. Do IEPs really work? Well, it has a lot to do with the communication between the parents and the school. And it's a lot to do with the communication between the parents and the teacher. And unfortunately, I've seen IEPs fail more than be successful. And part of that, again, is back to school policies, that a number of staff, all those kinds of things. Sometimes it's parents taking a back seat. Again, that thing where, oh, they're the educator, they're the experts, they're the pros. They're supposed to know all of the information, and they don't take in enough information from the parent about what really works for the child, right?
Oh,
And then
right.
sometimes it's just plain the classroom. The classroom is not a great fit for your child, and they need a different learning environment kind of thing. So unfortunately, I have to say, no, IEPs do not always work.
Yeah. And we had some issues with our son where
Mhm.
he would have IEPs and we would go in and say, he needs more help. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And then nothing would change, or they would take him out of class. And, one time it's like the kids were picking on him a lot. So he had safe places he could go. But one time they dropped him off at the school early. There weren't any supervision, and the kids out front started picking him, and one of them hit him. And he actually got suspended from school
Because he pushed back.
because he pushed back after he got
Right,
hit.
of course.
So the kid ripped the book out of his hand and was teasing him.
Mhm.
And the school promised him safe spaces and then didn't deliver. So, throughout the years of watching this, and we felt, she was a teacher.
I felt like I should have known better. I should have.
And we
you know,
felt so very impotent in all of that, because it's like, well, you keep saying this, but you're not delivering. And she's a teacher. She should know when she does stuff, she actually tries to deliver, and it just never happened. So,
And-
there's times where we really felt we let our kid down because he had an IEP and they just weren't following
and
through.
coming
I think
coming from the teacher's hat really quick, whenever you have a team in a room and they're creating this IEP, they don't always listen to the teacher. They're like, oh, well, the teacher is now going to be able to be a mad magician and do these 5
Right.
things for your child. And I'm like, how can I do those 5 things for this one child when I've got 25 or 28 other kids in the room? So
right. Where did that come from? Okay, well, before we wrap up, why don't you let everyone know how they can find you online?
thank you so much. Yes. So vibrantfamilyeducation.com. If you go there, you find everything that you need to know about us. There's the booking link. There's our free lead magnet called Education at Home and 10 Simple Steps. There's also a link to our podcast, Bringing Education Home. So go to vibrantfamilyeducation.com and you can get a hold of us.
That sounds great. And thank you again for your insights, your thoughts. It's a topic that we could go on and on and on about, but we'll have to do that next time. So thank you to everyone for listening, being part of the journey. As always, please reach out with any thoughts, feedback, ideas you have for this topic. Let's keep the conversation going and continue building a more inclusive, empowering world for our children. Till next time, take care and stay on the lighter side of the spectrum.